Feature interplayability is when a game site has a map of features that interact with one another, that have different inputs and outputs that affect one another. When you are very into a game that has high feature interplayability, you discern and you learn what is high stakes and what's low stakes, and you can opt in and out of those features as they suit your game style. However, if you're a new user, it becomes very difficult sometimes if things are not flagged that they are correlated to understand what's going on. Lioden is a great game because it has really nuanced features that are very deeply designed and organized. I love Lioden. It's one of my favorite games, but not knowing how to have this dialogue of mapping user feature interplayability and a user experience format has been something that I've struggled with. So I haven't been making very many Lioden videos, even though I play it very regularly. But I had like a brain blast the other day of 2 different ways that I can present this. So today we're going to go through one method of diagnosing and troubleshooting feature interplayability and how evident it is to users that objects are connected. So I kind of want to talk about like the design philosophy of putting like things together, and then also the search engine philosophy of having things linked to one another. I'm really excited for this. I'm really into Lioden, and I've been playing it a lot lately, and we're gonna start talking about the Beetle minigame because I think that if you are very close to Lioden, it's possible that you don't know the way that these things all work together, or if you do, you've done it so much that you might not actually recognize how it could be presented differently in a way that would feel more intuitive. And at the end of the day, user experience is a major form of marketing and advertising for your site. For me, gaming experiences are mostly about game design features. I like playing games that have interesting game mechanics. To me, it's like a big part of the site, and Lioden has great game mechanics, and if you could polish it and show it off well, it's incredibly important. Anyways, let's get into it. So here's a visual map of how it's going to work. To start off, we have the name of the feature. Now in Lioden, they actually organize each individual feature on their own page. So this is a lot easier to do, so the feature name is just going to be the site page name. So feeding larva. This is in the larva page where you go through your beetles, feeding larva. And the avatar that's affected is a beetle. That's the character, that's the object that's doing the action. The action is the actual thing that the user does, the click, and that is herb select, feed. So it's a drop down, you select which herb you want to give to the critter. That's what we're doing here. The cost is what it takes from you, so that's an herb. And then the gain is a party member, because if you feed your larva every day, or enough that it doesn't die, it becomes an additional party member. The cooldown is 24 hours, and there's no skill applied. These bottom 2 ones are more for like understanding how fun a gameplay mechanic is. Like, there's a certain level to which you could say, oh, there's a lot of skill here, and you could do it regularly, so this must be like a high stakes, enjoyable part of the site. So that is the breakdown of the feature of feeding larva. And how this is going to work is, now we can show what this plays into. The feature feeding larva directly plays into beetle training. The logic of them being related is that when you feed your larva, you keep them around, they grow up and to become beetles. And then once they are beetles, you can train the beetles. A direct result of training your beetles is that they will gain stats, and then you can battle those beetles or breed those beetles. However, beetle training is an optional feature that if you don't do, doesn't prevent you from the other parts. However, if you don't know how they all work together, you may not know that they're optional. So feeding larva feeds into beetle training, which feeds into beetle breeding or beetle battling. So this is the complete feature tree that is exclusive to beetles. Keep in mind that the beetle battling minigame does allow your alpha lion to gain experience. It's the only outside feature, the only outside mechanic, and that's important to note. However, this isn't the only way to get a beetle or to set off this tree. You can initially get a beetle from exploring. You can find larvae while exploring as an alpha lion, or you can purchase beetles from the auction house. So this is the entire feature map of how the beetle mechanics work. This system all laid out isn't very intimidating. It's easy to understand why what feeds into what. However, if you're a new user who just sees that they've added a new beetle mini game, the idea that you have to learn an entire new game could be so intimidating that you could put it off because you know that there's an entire system with moving pieces that you have to learn and you don't know how many moving pieces there are. Having guides built into your game or tutorials is a good way to break the ice. And Lioden has implemented a tutorial, and it does show on some level the interplay of these features and of course the native environment in where the events are occurring. The page, the actions should tell you how they affect what. And so in the Beetle Battle minigame, there is a good indicator of what you get at the end of each battle. It could do with maybe having a little snippet at the bottom of the page saying that every battle contributes to the experience of a beetle, and that after so much experience your beetle will level up, or if it showed an indicator of how much experience your beetle had. One very clear way to show that things are correlated is when they are brought up, having them be links or opportunities to go to the page where those features are housed. For instance, on the beetle page, the perfect place to link to the training grounds would be on the indicator of whether or not they trained today, and then maybe you could have a little question mark that explains what training is and how it plays into the rest of the features. Or on right next to wins and losses, having a link, or those words themselves being a link to the beetle battles. All of those things are like visual, easy to understand ways that you can teach users without holding their hand too much that these things are correlated, because these very objects with numbers associated with them are how these numbers change. There's a concept in user experience design that like things should be put together. It's the same reason why in your kitchen you probably have your cooking supplies and your spices in your pantry, because those are all related to eating. It's also why your online bank probably has all of your account information listed where your account transactions are, at least easy to navigate from that page. It's why on the Lioden page you have your alpha stats at the upper right. Why don't we have the beetle information all put together in a place where you can access it, or you could at least access the pages from one central hub like the beetle pages themselves? To me, that would make the most sense. If you have all the information listed together, being able to access it all in one place. That's both the concepts of putting like things together and linking things together for the sake of understanding. That's why Google gives priority to pages that have a lot of outbound and inbound links, because it shows relevancy and it makes it easier for users to understand how things are connected. I firmly believe that user experience design is a form of marketing. If you make your mechanics enjoyable, people will want to play them. And the mark of a successful game is a game that people try, understand, play, and recruit others to play. The Beetle minigame I enjoy very much. I play it constantly. It's a tether for me on Lioden. I check every 15 minutes to battle my beetles. I play more than 4 battles a day per beetle. So it works for me. And I would say that it's largely unsuccessful for a majority of the players, because when I go through my friends list, a good deal of them don't have beetles at all. And when you are a game designer, you are aggressively trying to get people to play your game. And having an exciting, well-structured game is wonderful, but if nobody understands how the pieces are connected, then what is it worth? The fun should not be in figuring out that there is a game and that this is how it's played. The fun should be in finding out how different inputs affect the output. If you think as a game designer that the fun is users discovering that there's a game and not that different parts affect different things differently if you learn them and experiment, then you're in for a bad time. Lots of people aren't going to play your game. You shouldn't make a burden in getting started. This is what I always warn people about when starting YouTube channels, etc. You shouldn't make it hard to get started. Instead, you should make it enjoyable to play and learn more about. The way that I think this could be addressed is use that layout of how features interplay when you're trying to learn a new game, or if you don't have it set up for a game that you run, to make sure that you understand how each piece works together and how obvious it is that all of those pieces are part of a network and a system. To me, that's critical that it's mapped out and understood. And then what you need to do is ask yourself, are things linked together that are related? It's always good to have 3 inbound links to a page. You should be able to get somewhere from 3 different sources and ask yourself, are my things organized properly? And then what it comes down to, not everyone has room for a UX designer in their budget. It's a specialized skill. In order to justify it, I recommend looking at the success rate. How many users are online daily? How many of them are playing this game? How many of them are visiting all of the pages in the network? If all the pages in the network or system of a feature aren't getting visited by all of the players who play the mini game that is in that network, then perhaps it needs to be simplified, clarified. It's always good to start from a position of testing. Change small things to see if it has an impact. And if it does, keep testing, keep working, set goals, find out what you can do to get more people playing a game. When it comes to the Beetle minigame, the people who play it benefit the most when more people play it, because then you have more beetles in the market for sale. Anyways, it's a whole soapbox. Thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and even though this is a case study on the Beetle minigame, you can apply the same concept to all of the different minigames on every game. And I think it's really useful to think about it as features with that column idea of how it's all working together. Alright, thank you guys so much. I'm sorry for the squeaky cat. Kiki is so gosh darn squeaky. Squeaky Kiki. And she's always just doing loud things in the background. Oh my gosh. More videos soon. Hope you guys enjoyed this Lioden one. Bye.